Welcome to the Holy Spirit's Curriculum of Joy podcast. My name is Wanaka Oberhuber and I'm your host. My guest today is Craig Parks. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
I'd like to start with a question for which you can take as much time as you like to answer it. How did you come to see the world the way you do today?
I think it's really a series of events that happen in life from childhood to the present moment. And I think that it's an ever evolving thing. None of it is ever permanent. So, the way that I saw the world when I was 3 years old or 8 years old or 12 years old, 19 years old, it's always been different. I suspect that even the way that I saw the world, say 5-6 months ago, has probably changed than how it is now. But I think it's certainly influenced by the experiences, but also the people that I'm around, the books that I read or the podcasts I listen to, and how I spend my time. Yeah, and certainly the music that I listen to. I mean, I'm a professional musician, so I think that also influences a lot for me.
Yeah, music is a very important aspect, you're right. So how would you describe the way you see the world now?
I see the world as kind of containing everything. When people say, "Oh God, the world's so brutal and it's awful," and I'm like, yeah, there's that, but it's also beautiful and it's stunning and it's incredible, and there's that too, and there's everything in between. And so I believe that we human beings are the ones who are helping to create what each day looks like. And so the way I see the world is, in my own place in it, that uh, is that I want to be part of the creative process that moves humanity closer to harmony and closer to more joy and more kindness in this world.
So how have you come to do that?
For me, the way I do that has primarily been working with children. And, I've been a camp director and a youth director and a professional musician. And so in all of these ways, you know, this is how I've done it. Like, for me, it was clear that I was never, because I struggled so much with like chemistry and sciences and all of that, and math. Like, I was never meant to be curing cancer. I was never meant to be, in the sciences. But for me, music and the arts, and also my ability to connect with children of all ages, I definitely had an aptitude for that. And so getting to start 2 summer camps and train a lot of people how to work with kids and to work with teenagers and to work with parents of teens and parents who have kids with special needs, like understanding where my gifts are and expressing them in those ways. So that's how I've done it, is in working with kids and training people how to work with kids. That's my little slice of the pie.
That's marvelous. I also work with kids. You probably know that about me. Anyways, yeah, that's beautiful. I would like to share a little bit about the way you work with kids and inspire kids, and how you also use the arts in that area.
Yeah, well, thank you for asking. To be a camp director, I got to actually start not one but 2 camps from scratch, and which I'm now kind of starting to understand that's a pretty unique thing to get to do, and to get to set my own mission statement and then train people how I want to. And one of the biggest things that for me was teaching kids conflict resolution, right? Teaching healthy communication, even as young as like, entering kindergartners, 4 and 5 year olds, teaching them to be able to go to another person and say, hey, that doesn't work, or I didn't like that, or can we work this out? Or did I do something to upset you? Because I'm not sure why you did this, and then, teaching them to really own their power of communication and to actually resolve conflict, because we human beings, we're always going to have conflict. It's not that we're not going to have conflict, right? I mean, it's but we can get a whole lot better at the skill of communication, and instead of going to other people and complaining about other people to other people, like, to be able to teach people directly how to go to somebody, I think is huge. And to create spaces where people can truly be themselves. They don't have to talk, dress, or act like anybody else, but they're truly celebrated for their uniqueness, but within the context of community, and that they have a place, that there's a place of belonging. That's that's what my whole career has been about. And even when I'm leading song sessions, you know the songs can be goofy, they can be silly, but they're they're done, but they can also express really beautiful values, but they're always done in a way to have everybody feel included, that there's a place for them and that they matter. And so for me, that's how I've done it, in creating joyful, silly, goofy, but also real intentional spaces where, when things go awry, there's a pathway to get them back into harmony. And so, and now that I'm in my mid 50s now, I just started getting this real urge of like, oh, I want to go beyond my own little local community. I want to be able to share the wisdom that I've now had, and that's why I created, I think, the Parenting A to E course that I developed, which teaches the A is affect, knowing that ultimately when when we're moving around this earth, all we have is our bodies and our voices. That's what we have to work with. And so, um, the A in the Parenting A to E stands for affect, and I have a whole course that teaches people how do you place your body in space, and how do you use your face and your arms and your hands, in a way that can maximize for the E, and the E stands for effect, the effectiveness, the kind of connections we want with our kids, which is hopefully loving, sweet, trusting relationships. So, that's the other way I do it, is that I now want to expand beyond just the local, and that's why I've created this course to teach parents how to deepen their connection in really joyful ways with music, and how to turn the mundane parts of everyday life and everyday parenting into those being the memorable, joyful memories. Because, I mean, let's face it, we can take our kids to Disneyland and they'll remember that, but most of parenting is not taking our kids to Disneyland. Most of it is, oh my God, I got to give them a bath. I got to feed them. I got to get them to bed on time. And how do you make those really beautiful and connecting and memorable? And that's what I've put a lot of attention towards building and creating, because I want other parents to be able to experience that in a way that I have as well.
There's a lot about storytelling also in these things. How do you tell your kids about your life? How do you share about that so that it's nourishing and helpful? I think that that's also very interesting. But I think the singing is really a beautiful way of connecting, and I love singing with children. My work as well. So I think you're welcome to expand on that or any other aspect of it, because I'm really fascinated.
Yeah, I think that in many ways, I could tell my kids about things, but really what I want to be able to do is just have my life be role modeling what it is. And, so to try to share as much as I can with them. It's interesting, when my son was born, I was so excited to become a dad, and about a year and a half into the process, we realized, my son got diagnosed with being at risk for autism, and it turned out he's on the autism spectrum. And I was in a band at the time, and we were making progress. We were touring a little bit, and we were recording an album. We were playing some music festivals, and it was one of my biggest dreams, is to play music. and have a successful band. When that band broke up, my son was, I don't know, probably around maybe 3. And and I stopped playing music because I just was like, it's like my son needs all my attention, which he did need a lot of my attention. And it was like work and being a dad, and that was it. And but what happened was, for basically over like 10 years, I kind of stopped playing music. And um, and then when my daughter was born, about 10 years later, um, my daughter's, yeah, 10 and a half years younger than her brother. When she was really young, I started thinking about the fact that I actually stopped playing music. I stopped doing what like fed my own soul and what brought me so much joy, because I just got into just like, okay, I got to take care of my kids, and I gotta, I gotta work. Um, and at one point I stopped. I was like, what am I role modeling for my own children, that like, that when they're older, that they can't do the thing that feeds their soul? And so, but my dreams had changed at that point. I wasn't into like trying to make it big in the music industry, but I still needed to express myself and play music with other people and be creative in that way. And so I ended up reaching out to some friends and I said, "Hey, I'm ready to play some music again, but this time it's not anything to do with ambition or making money or any of that. It's really just for the pure joy of making music with people who I love and respect, and just enjoying the rehearsals, enjoying going out and playing some gigs." And um, and that was probably about 9 years ago or so. And I haven't stopped since. And I think it's made me actually a better dad. And actually, my kids now get to come to some of my shows, and they get to see me living that, and they get to dance. And my son, who is an extraordinary drummer, will sit in with the band. He'll get up on drums, and it gives him a chance to really like shine too. So I think that more than just telling, again, it's like living it. And my kids also see that like the career I've chosen is very community based. It's very much about building community and connection and spaces where people can be authentic and be themselves, whether it's summer camps, whether it's meditation groups, or whether it's, concerts, or whatever it is I'm doing. It's really about spaces where people can be themselves and be joyful and be thoroughly expressed in healthy ways. So, and yes, I can tell them about that, but for them to see what I'm actually doing, I think is the biggest testament of it all.
Yes, I think you're right. The joy is the main factor that you're actually also allowing yourself to do what you love, and that is a great example. Because if you don't do that, who's going to find out, right? What it is like, especially kids. So yeah, that's really really important. Yeah, and we all have according to A Course in Miracles, it calls it, we all have a special function. It doesn't make us special, but we do have a special function. And the way we bring each other home, so to heaven, to joy, right, to happiness, and to being willing to recognize that we are love, that is very unique, and that is absolutely important that we live that. So I think that's a very good point that you're making there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I agree with that. Like, I think that each of us have really unique gifts, and I think that our job is to do our best to understand what they are, and realize that those gifts don't make us better than any other human being. They're just given to us for the sake of expressing them to make our world actually just better and more harmonious. So, I'm grateful for being able to connect with kids the way that I do. I'm so grateful that I'm able to play guitar and write some songs, and I'm grateful that I'm able to train people how to work with kids and see real results. I'm grateful that um, as as challenging as this journey is to, has been, like, even to create the parenting A to E course, like Wow, I'm so glad that it's now out there in the world, and it's helping parents and and kids have deeper, more joyful connections in their own homes, and even understanding the ripple effects that that has out in the world too.
Another important factor of this is how do you see kids? Because the idea of what a kid is or what role they have has changed over time. One of the changing factors that have become visible is the children's rights bill of children's rights. So I think there's a lot has changed in the way we view kids and the way kids are welcomed into life and what they can do with their lives.
Y- Yeah, I'm curious. Like, it's interesting to hear you say that. I'd like to hear you speak more about that. Like, what is it you notice in that in terms of that difference?
Well, I studied anthropology, and the way anthropologists study kids has changed over time. So first it was through the grown-ups view of kids and how and so you were actually not asking kids about their lives or what they thought about it. You were asking grown-ups, right? That was the where it was, and then you were observing them perhaps, but you were never asking them why they did what they did or why they felt the way they felt or anything like that. And then it shifted over time to seeing the kids as building their own reality, their own world, and their own, having their own ideas about what's going on and what they're doing and what role they play and so on. And then it became a lot more capable of seeing kids as powerful. And also, there's all these cultures where kids have their own communities where they're moving around, and you would, as an anthropologist, you'd go and join that and then allow yourself to become part of that as best as you could. So the kids were the bosses, right? Not you, right? And you learned from them. So the idea of how you view kids has changed in that way, that actually kids have a voice now, right? Their voice was pro bono. Maybe it was, yeah, maybe you'd listen to them, but you didn't really take them seriously, right? And then the change to taking kids seriously and seeing them as participating in the building of community, as you call it, or building lives and putting things together and actually discovering truths and so on. And in A Course in Miracles, the view of has also is also something that has provided another way of seeing it for me. So when you think of the idea of the human being as being love, and it doesn't have anything to do with how old you are, right? And these ideas of being guilty, feeling bad about yourself, feeling separate, and so on have nothing to do with age either, right? With how old you are. They're universal issues that human beings are dealing with. And so, this remembering who we are, that we are love, is something that is the same for grown-ups, for kids, for everyone. They may express it differently, may need different types of working on, they may work on it differently outwardly, but the issues are the same.
Yeah, and I think that we still have a long way to go to get there as well. I mean, when I think about you know, that it's still acceptable to hit kids, right? It's still acceptable to spank them. It's still acceptable to basically assault them. It's legal to assault them still. And it's the only group of humans, that where that's legal. Like if we hit anybody or spanked anybody on the street, we'd get arrested. And And so much of the research has shown just the really, really horrible effects of kids who get hit, right? And their sense, like, what you're talking about, that sense that they are loved. Well, it's harder for, I think, humans to get that sense when there are other human beings who are actually physically hitting them or assaulting them or spanking them, and even verbal abuse too, right? um, and not to say that us parents are always going to be perfect, or that we're not going to have moments of frustration, but the role of repair is really critical, you know um, but if but I think we need to move more towards where children are seen as that essence that you were talking about, with more rights. And kids are still getting abused, and physically and verbally. And like I said, I've never hit my kids. I made a vow to never hit my kids. And I grew up in a different era. I got spanked, I got the belt. And my parents now regret it. They wish they hadn't. um and I remember when I was a teenager saying to to my parents, like, I'm never going to hit my kids, right? And at that time, they're like, I remember they said, "So you say that now?" They're like, "You just wait till you're a parent, you'll find that you do." And it's like, nope, never did, and I never will. And I always know there's other ways. And like I said, they came around. They now regret that they ever did that, but that's still a thing, and you still see a ton of people defending it. Well, I was hit and I was spanked, I turned out fine. I'm like, are you really fine? I don't know. So, but, again, I'm not asking parents to be perfect or never lose their temper. I mean, like I said, I've had my moments with my kids, but the one thing that I've done is, like I meditate every day. And when I've had those moments, I do my best to, like, if not the same day, maybe the next day, to like go back and say, wow, I want to talk to you. I need to apologize to you. That is not my best. And I'm so sorry. And I could see how that would have been scary for you, or just validate their experience of being on the receiving end of that, and just let them see too that, one, adults and parents are capable of apologizing, that adults are not supposed to be perfect. And so I think that, that journey you're talking about in terms of children's rights, we certainly are, I think, have moved in good directions to ask them, what's your experience? How do you feel? Do you like that? Was that interesting? Let them really understand their own experiences. Even as a camp director, I would train my staff not to say, oh, good job, if they're looking at their art project, but more like, or when the kids ask, do you like it? To put it back to them, be like, do you like it? What do you think? What was the most fun part for you to create that? Get them back into their own experience, so they don't turn into what, like, Alfie Cohen calls praise junkies. They can relate to their own being, their own sense of joy. So, I feel really strongly about these things.
And not all countries have ratified the Bill of Rights for Kids. But anyways, yeah, it's a very tricky thing because we don't all know how to do that, right? That's why you're training people as well, right? Because it's something that hasn't become common knowledge of how to communicate with each other without putting each other down or putting oneself down. And yeah, and of course, the Miracles says that is possible, right? It says there's the holy relationship, which would mean we see each other as whole, and the special relationship where we're trying to get something from each other all the time that we think we don't have. And of course, that's conflict, right? That's obvious conflict, and the holy relationship actually undoes the conflict. It removes it from the experience, right? And then you so I think that's where we want to go, right? And the thing is, how do we do that? Because we all like you said, we still get caught up in the ideas of separation that make us feel very unhappy and do things that are not exactly good or not nice or helpful.
Yeah, but the good news is that we human beings are capable of learning, and we're capable of transformation, and we're capable of growing, if we're open to it. And sometimes that process can take longer than we would like, but we we are adaptable, and that's the good news. And there's people like you out there who are helping to spread beautiful messages, and trusting in the process and the journey of it all is really important. And for me, I just want to be able to, while I have breath, to be able to make an impact, and care very deeply about my kids and all the kids that I work with, and I care deeply about the world, and I see kind of the interconnectedness of all of it. And so um, that's why I want to keep putting things out there to help parents learn and help parents grow. And that's why I started Parenting Harmony in the first place, because I want to get out of just the local scene, and expand my reach. And knowing that I've helped a lot of people, it's now I want to be able to expand more. So I appreciate you allowing me to be on your podcast.
You're very welcome, and I'm also very passionate about children. So that's really really wonderful that we get to meet each other. Yeah. So this this journey, you were saying to appreciate even the journey when things are going wrong, when it's not working and you think it's not going to work out and stuff like that. Have you encountered prejudice towards you because you were, for instance, because of being a man? Or,
Huh. I, nothing really jumps out at me in terms of, uh, you mean like being a man in kind of like in terms of working with kids where that's been more a female dominated kind of space. I don't, I don't think so. Um, I think that I've been really fortunate in my career that there have been people along the way who've seen my gifts, and more so like than even I saw them at the time, and they encouraged me and they helped develop me, um, and then I was given the autonomy and the freedom to actually do what I do, and that, wow, like what a gift that is, really, for any human being to fully see another human being in their greatness, and in their joy, even before they themselves can see it. Like, and I've tried to pass that on with all of the kids that I work with, and all of the teens that I work with. Is I see their greatness. I could see them in ways that they don't see themselves, maybe in fullness yet. So yeah, I don't, I've been really fortunate, and I feel like I've done my best to kind of carve my own path. Like, it's been a pretty unusual, like, there's not a lot of people who, it's not like, I chose to be a doctor, or even being a camp director, right? I mean, getting to start two camps, like, even people who are camp directors didn't necessarily start their own camp. They inherited or whatever. So, you know, I feel a little different in terms of my journey. There's not a lot of people that I feel can really relate fully to what I've done or been through. Um, but I can say that luckily, maybe, or I'm just grateful, I have not experienced a lot of a lot of discrimination in that kind of way.
yeah, the thing is, I think the discrimination is much larger the younger the kids are. So the question is, how much focus have you been putting on the youngest kids, or is your main focus on the teens? Because I realize that men are much more accepted when the kids are older because I work with very young kids, and that being a man is a topic with the youngest.
Yeah, well, what's interesting about that is that like I've done a lot of music in preschools, for example, right? And I've done mom and tot classes as a musician, and I think that and when I go to these preschools, it's almost the teachers are almost always women, right? And so, but I'm also not. I'm the musician, right? And so I think that um, that's one. And I think also to some degree why you don't see a lot of men in there is because there's there's still, I think, the old traditional pressure for men to be breadwinners and to be making um, a lot of money. And let's face it, like teachers who are teaching preschool, like they can barely make ends meet if they often have more jobs than just that too. So I think there's a lot at play there.
There's many factors to it, but the prejudices are stronger when are more the younger the kids get towards men working with children, and the fears as well, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's all there. I mean, it sounds like you probably have experienced a fair share of that. Like what, like do you have your own horror stories with that?
Well, I don't think it's appropriate to share much of it, but I will say there are issues and things that I've faced as a man that have not been ideal, and I've been and you experience being rejected because you're a man, like certain jobs at a certain point you wouldn't get them because you were a man. Not that that was the official point of view, but the unofficial point of view was there. So you had, so it has become get better over time, right? But it's not totally solved. Let's put it that way. There's still a ways to go for men to be totally accepted in the early childhood education realm.
Yeah, I agree. Um, and again, I've been fortunate in that my role has largely been, when talking about the preschool set, being a musician, and I think that you look at people like, like Raffi and Mr. Rogers, and so there are some male role models that are there, um, you know, es- especially in the musical realm. So but I think if I was just trying to be a teacher, um, I could see how there'd be a lot more of that, without a doubt.
So, do you think that the impact of your work has also opened the path up for people to get into this profession? Because I think it's a very very important profession to work with children and yeah share your basically you're sharing yourself because you that's the only way you can actually work with people in general, right? And with children in particular, is actually a lot about sharing oneself. And I think that that is very courageous and means a lot of inner work as well. So you have to, it's always this reviewing and re reinterpreting basically yourself as well, because you need to change things, you have to adapt, you have to be flexible, you have to, there's so much to it, you have to be very aware of what's going on. You have to listen. You have to share so that other people know what you're about, and so on. You have to develop rules, but you also have to develop ways of participation where these rules actually support that and are not against it. And there's so much to it. Maybe you want to share a bit about
Yeah, actually, quite a few, again, I've been doing this a lot of years. I was a camp director for 27 summers, and I've had a number of my past staff who decided to go into education, being teachers, even like speech and language pathologists. I've had a few who've gone on and gotten into the camp world. I've had others who've gone on to be musicians as well, and because they've been influenced by and yeah, I mean, my my goal isn't to steer anybody into like necessarily doing what I'm doing. My hope is that, like I said earlier, is I believe that each of us have unique gifts. My hope is that people will make choices that are really true and authentic for themselves, so they can be their fully expressed selves. And I think really, when you're at your most powerful, to be a change agent in the world. And I know, like for me, I'm trying to go down this new road of being an entrepreneur all of a sudden. I mean, I've just been working with kids, and now, I've developed this course, and I wrote a book, How to Stress Less and Have More Fun with Your Kids. I have this parenting A to E, from stress to smiles, how to turn the mundane into the memorable. And I'm just, there's a book that's hopefully going to come out next month that I'm in the process of, called the Parks Party Central Parent Child Activity Book, 25 screen free activities that parents can do with their kids. Um, and I and I've had to battle my own internal demons to keep growing and be able to say, oh, I've got something to say to the larger world, even to approach podcasts and say, hey, can I be on? Like there's this tension between the like owning owning my gifts, but not from a place of ego or arrogance, but from a place of service. And um and it's a tricky tension that I've found. And so, I'm not one with, like my former kids be like, well, you should do this or you should do that. I'm trying to role model what it is to just be true to yourself. And um and a lot of them do notice. And and I've gotten into some amazing conversations, and I'm very, very close with many of my former kids who are now in their 20s and 30s, and some are even in their 40s. And and some I've gotten to officiate their weddings. And um, so I know I've had an impact. But again, it's that balance. I just want them to be true to themselves, and I want to continue my own path, and not you feel like, well, I've arrived. Like I'm still in that process too. I've got my own struggles of trying to understand, like what does the universe want from me? Like how can I use my gifts for maximum impact while I still have breath?
it. Yeah, it's really amazing to choose to share, right? And to accept that one can be an expert and at the same time be a total beginner in one's own heart, right? So it is very important to be willing to share from where you're at. And yes, I feel like a total beginner, and at the same time I am willing to share from where I'm at, because you actually do have a lot of knowledge, right, and a lot of experience, but it doesn't mean that every day isn't a place where I'm actually discovering more about who I am and what I'm here to do, and all these, and in A Course in Miracles it basically says we already are at home, so it's taking it from the other side. Okay, I'm already at home, but I have all these blocks are there they need to be removed so that I can see that, right? But yeah, it's a very important thing, is to be willing to walk that path. And I've experienced that, that I've, even in the podcasting, some guests need me to tell them, okay, come from where you're at, it's fine, right? I don't need you to be, I don't know where, you think you should be, right? That's not what I'm asking of you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. It like what a tightrope to walk, you know, of, I was just telling one of my like this something I shared with one of my meditation groups just last week was that it was that very balance of like, oh, there's a healthy pride. There's a healthy pride that you can have, knowing that you do have something to give. Like you're here for a reason and a purpose, and this world needs you to own it. Um, and there's also a place for real humility, right? To not, again, that knowing that the gifts that we have to express are not like things that make us better than any other human being. They're there to serve other human beings, and you could, so go and serve with pride, and know that, yeah, you've got gifts to express, so do it, own it. It doesn't make you arrogant. Um, and then after you've done it and you've really served people, like, don't sit there to go like, oh yeah, look at me. Like at that point, be like, just be humble and just grateful that you're in a position to be able to do that. And that's what this journey has been about for me. It's like, oh, like I can be honest with the fact that I know like these 14 songs I put in this course have brought tremendous amount of joy to all the campers and all the kids and my own kids. As being a dad, they've helped. I know that they have helped solidify and deepen even more joyful bonds between me and my two kids as they were growing up. I knew that they made bath time even more joyful. I know that this song made the hand washing more joyful. I know it made when we had time to just play more joyful, or bedtime richer, deeper, and memorable, so that when my kids are older, they'll be able to look back on bedtime like, oh yeah, that song my dad sang every night, that lullaby that he wrote. It was so sweet. And so I can own that and be like, yeah, I've written these songs, um, and so I can share them with the world, and not, and it's not for, oh, can I win a Grammy award? No, it's for the sake of, oh, other parents who are interested in creating lifelong joyful childhood memories with their kids. Why not get it out there? Why not share that? And why not have more love and more joy out in the world? And I could still be like, yeah, I did that, and I'm happy to have it out there, and it doesn't make me a better human being. That's just my gift, And if the doctor who performed my wrist surgery years ago, or my back surgery a few years ago, it's like, it doesn't make them a better human being than I am. And I'm so grateful that they like pursued that gift of medicine and science, so that they had the skills that could relieve my suffering. And I hope that they're not walking around believing they're better human beings than me, but like humble too. And that's the hope, that we can all understand that we're here to be in service, to create more joy, more love, more harmony with each other.
Yeah, I like that way. I also have, Course in Miracles has that idea of equality versus specialness. And specialness would be what you were saying, yeah, the arrogance of think that it's also arrogant to think that you're less than someone else. Just to make that point here. So yeah, so we need to recognize that we are equal, and if we have any uniqueness or anything about us, special functions and so on, it's not because we're better or less than someone else, but because that's how we can, yeah, share the that we all are one. I like to say it that way. We're all one. We are all, and our nature is love, and that our source, whether you call it our source God or have other terms for it, that we have that one place we're coming from, and we need to recognize that, and that makes us actually equals.
Yeah, that's that's the hard hitting truth. Like that's the deep stuff right there. Is that Everything is one, everything is interconnected. There's nothing that's separate. You know, I mean, if you think about like us being in these physical forms, it really only happened because of all the things that happened before we were even born, right? And the things that we do in this life, in this physical form, will have ripple effects going forward beyond us being in this physical form. And to understand that interconnectivity, and I think adds a sense uh, of responsibility. Like, who are we being, you know? And it doesn't have to be heavy in like a bad or negative way. It could actually be, wow, that's extraordinary. That's really interesting, or that's really cool. And that that's a power that that could be used for just a lot of goodness, a lot of joy. And you know, and again, if we understand what our gifts are, it's like, yeah, let's express them, and let's receive the gifts of others without being jealous, you know, of being like, that's so awesome that that person has those gifts, you know, and we can kind of just eliminate a lot of the ego stuff. That would be beautiful.
Yeah, it's so important. And also the idea that we have to be in any particular way, because even it doesn't mean because it's my gift that it will be top notch. That's not necessarily true, and it doesn't have to be, because why do people only appreciate what is the stuff that we think is the best? Not true, because why would we have partners, why would we have kids, why would we have friends if they didn't appreciate us? And and I can't say that I don't know what type of famous person, and even if I were, it wouldn't mean that either, because I still am equal.
Yeah, I love that you bring that up, especially, you know, like one of the things that I've done in my course, like I've got these 14 songs and they're recorded, and parents could, you know, if when they have the course, they can play the recordings. But the goal of the course is to actually have the parents learn these songs. They're easy melodies, right? And the parents being the ones who are singing it to their own children, right? And one of the objections that parents will have is what you're talking about. It's like, well, I don't have the best voice, you know, or you know, but oh man, to a 2 or 3 year old, your voice is the voice of love. There is no bad voice. A little 2, 3, 4 year old is not sitting there being a music critic from the New York Times. Like it's, you know, like you don't have to be the best. Like for me, I had to get over my own thing. I don't, you know, I don't think I have a great voice. I don't have the best voice out there, but I recorded these songs because it's like I want to get it out there. I want parents to be able to have this. And so um what a great point you made there. It's like none of us have to be the best. That's not what this is about. It's about, can we still have an appreciation and learn and grow and be expressions of love.
That's what's so important, because I know how easily one can be held back by the standards that you've seen. Like, let's say you love writing. I love writing, for instance, but I also know books, like, by writers that are like, I don't know, high end of writers with a vocabulary, stunning vocabulary, and a stunning, beautiful way of describing landscapes and this and that, or even spiritual experiences or whatever, artistic experiences. So beautiful, so amazing. And I have to admit, I don't have that, right, in that, at that level, right? But if I'm not willing to follow my passion of writing, who will ever get to benefit from what I have to share? If I'm always asking myself to be at that other level, that isn't mine, right? I have the language that I have. My language might be much simpler, much shorter sentences, perhaps less flowery descriptions, right? Whatever, right? Maybe my parables are not so intense, like the parables in the Bible, or whatever else, right? What I'm using, the storytelling gifts. And nonetheless, I've come to the conclusion it's worth it. The same as podcasting, right? Sharing what you have to say. Okay, you share it with the language you have available to you, with the abilities you have, and that's worth it.
Yeah, one of the things I've heard from some parents with me, they're like, well, Craig, of course you can do these things, like, because they've seen me, lead, a couple hundred kids at a summer camp, and they see this like real like dynamic, you know, personality and this charisma, and and what I have to try to convince people is like, no, 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 like it's all teachable. Like that's why I use the word affect. Like it's just what you're seeing, what you're labeling as charisma is just the way I'm using my hands and my voice, and it's all teachable. And that's what I teach. People think, well, you've been working with kids for years. I can't do that. I'm like, no, actually you're capable of it. And I actually break it down to teach you like this is what you can do and this is how you can do it. And this is a simple song that you can sing. And here is a really fun activity that you can do using these skills too. And here's bedtime rituals that will make that moment of each night so much sweeter. And no, you don't have to be like camp director, woo, it's you get to be you and do your version of it. And I break it down so that it's it's teachable, it's learnable, and so learn it and then just love it. Just love the joy that is going to happen now between you and your child and the memories that you guys are going to make from just everyday living, and you're right, like people, like all of us, like we have to kind of fight our egos around it, but again, like we can, like that's the good news, is that we can.
And the thing is also learning to respect, even if your texts or your melodies are not as fancy or not as polished as Craig's or whoever else's you're looking at, right? It's yours, and it's something that you can cherish because it comes from your experience, from your heart, from your ideas, and from your language and your understanding of things, and your willingness to put yourself out there and put yourself in front of your kids or with your kids, right? Like, I think one of the things that I think is so beautiful is also jamming with kids, right? Making up new melodies and words and songs with kids. And I don't know how your experience with that is, but I think that's one of the most beautiful ways of connecting with children as well.
Oh yeah. In fact, one of the anthems at camp is a song that I wrote with a bunch of 4 and 5 year olds, and it came out of a conversation I was having with them. I was like, "Hey, how do we make the world better?" And it was so phenomenal. All their little hands shot up, and I was like, "Yeah." And the first kid said, "Share." I'm like, "Yeah." Can you imagine if everyone just shared a little bit more? Another kid raised her hand and was like, be nice. I'm like, yeah, right. If we share, and then we're just like, we're nice and kind to each other. Like, what a beautiful thing. And another kid said, if we listen, I'm like, ooh, that's deep. Yeah, right. If we all just listen, right? Listen to ourselves, listen to each other. Like, yes. And then the other kid said, listen to your friends. I'm like, yeah, right. And so I ended up writing a song called "Share and Be Nice," and it's actually one of the 14 songs. And again, like that tune became an anthem. And even there's a show I did with my daughter during the pandemic called Parks Party Central, and on that show we ended every episode with that song. It kind of became an anthem of the show too. And the chorus is "Bring peace to the world." It's like, and seeing this little 5 year old and her dad singing that from the song that was written with a bunch of 4 and 5 year olds, like there's power in that. And yeah, it's like kids can come up with stuff. Like they're really immensely creative. They'll come up with their own melodies and their own songs. And I've written a number of songs with kids that were just fun. Some were just silly. At camp one day, like we decided, I was with the kindergartners, and I well, let's just write a song. I'm like, great. And I'm like, well, we'll just take something. And the kid just grabbed a leaf and like, let's write a song about this. I'm like, great. And wrote the silliest song that became another huge hit at camp. And it's like the creativity is there if we're just open to it. And then the pride that the kids feel too. And even with older kids, I've written songs with older kids too. Wrote a song about courage. That's something they wanted to explore. So like there's a lot there in terms of our own creative forces, but we have to be kind of an open vessel for it.
And that I was actually in one of the podcasts where I was a guest. I spoke about an experience of coming up with creative with kids, being creative with kids, and yeah, I was working with under 4 year olds. What the thing I was the experience I was speaking about was with kids, between 1.5 and maybe 3 years old at the most, right? So it was like, yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, you let them come up with ideas. They participate. They might even start singing themselves, making up their own thing. It's just amazing what can happen by being willing to be creative together.
Yeah, in fact, the Parks Party Central show I did with my daughter, we started at the beginning of the pandemic, and it did not take me long to fall into a funk and get pretty depressed to not be around kids and not be around do my job and all of that. And I turned to my daughter who was 5 at the time, and I was like, "Hey, do you want to do a show with me?" And she was like, "Yeah." And so at that point, we thought the pandemic was going to, like, a month in, we'd all be back in the office or whatever. So we did, our first episode, and it was on Facebook Live, and so it was this interactive show. Whoever showed up with us, we would have interactive games, and we did music, and we did comedy, and it was just it was really, really fun. And but then I thought, oh, we'll do a few episodes, and then everything's back to normal. And then 3 or 4 weeks in, it became clear, oh, this is going to go on for a while. And I was thinking, how am I going to create a weekly show, like every week? But when in lockdown, when I was just with my daughter throughout the week, just the natural process of being open to silly things and doing silly things, like things would happen during the week, and we go, oh, let's put that in the show. And so the show would kind of write itself. And so we ended up doing, in that first year, we did 50 episodes. We did 50 weekly episodes in that first year of the pandemic. And then the next couple of years we slowed down. We ended up doing 70 episodes of Parks Party Central. I put 3 up on YouTube. If anybody wants to check them out, you can go to Parks Party Central. And this book I'm coming out with, the parent-child activity book, is these wacky, really wacky, fun, silly, connecting, screen-free activities that was born out of these things. And it's great. And when people get the book, it's going to be a digital book, so that when they read about the activity they can do, they can then click on a link that will show them, just from the show, my daughter and I doing these activities. And but that whole process really showed me the power of collaborative creativity with children too, in a way that really kind of blew my mind, because I'd always been really creative and collaborative, but that was one of the gifts of that very, very difficult time.
Yeah, and I think I actually, shortly before the pandemic started, I started this podcast, and then now I'm over 200 episodes. Like, it's just amazing what can happen over the time. Yeah, it's beautiful, and working, like you said, I think that's really really amazing what we can do when we actually put our minds to it. Because like you, I understand this issue of like thinking, oh, I can't give all now because then I won't have any more ideas. And I've come to the conclusion, okay, give all now because that means you'll have more ideas. And that has changed my view very very much, because this idea that by giving your total everything that you have could be endangering you that afterwards it will start getting bored, okay, and boring, and you won't have anything more to give, is something that has held me back in life. And so choosing to say, okay, give all, and then more will come, then it's natural that it will start flowing and will be more. So it's a very important thing also for writing, for music, for everything, because you could say, okay, I'll come up with one melody, and I can't give that melody away because then I won't have any more melodies to give, right?
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that I started last year was I've been putting on these like kind of quarterly musical meditation evenings, and um, and I've got a friend of mine who's a phenomenal singer, um, and I'll do some long pieces on acoustic guitar. I'll do some long pieces on electric guitar, and then I'll sit down at a piano or a keyboard and do. And it's largely really improvised, and she'll kind of improvise and sing stuff over it on these real musical meditative journeys. And to be able to pick up a guitar or sit down at a piano and it's like what you're talking about, like just trust that there's like this endless well of creativity that if we trust in it, it will spring forth. And those evenings have really shown me that like that's true. I've never picked up a guitar and then just had nothing come out, and so it is a really it's a deep spiritual trust and interesting thing to have that level of trust that let it all out, and that actually opens up space for more. So I love that a lot. I think that's a great perspective.
That's been a challenge thing to keep in mind when writing a book, right? Okay, I'm giving it my all, and this idea is like, oh, I thought this was, this is the greatest idea I've ever had, right? And there'll be nothing comparable afterwards, right? And you put it all out there, and then the next idea turns up, right? And the next topic, and the next topic, and it just there's more, and that's amazing. It's like a discovery, like, oh my God, there's more, right? It's like it's not like it's the end all, right? And yeah, so I think that's very important that we are willing to recognize that the our I mean, A Course in Miracles has a lot of beautiful things to say about our our source, because we are sourced by the same source, and that source is extending itself. We are the extension of that source, so we have exactly the same nature. But this world that we appear to be in, or that we are thinking we are experiencing, is a dream of separation. But I've come to the conclusion that even though it's a dream of separation, because we are from that source that is love, even the dream of separation can only lead right back to love, can only point back to love, even though we intended it to point to separation. But it can't, no matter how, I think exploring deeper, the deeper you go, you will only find love again, because that's where it's from. And so that's why I think it's so important to put yourself out there and put your whole being into it, and there'll be more.
Yeah, that is some golden nugget of wisdom right there. And it takes, and it's vulnerable, right? Because you have that there's a level of faith and there's a level of trust to be able to get there. But I think it's a really great reminder and a potent one as well.
So it's getting time to wrap things up. So I would like to thank you so much for coming on the podcast, for sharing your experiences, and actually validating also things that I had to say. And I think it was a great thing that we're both so enthusiastic about kids. I think that's very nice. And to be able to share this passion together with the people who are viewing or watching this now. Thank you all for doing that. And please subscribe to the podcast, let people know about it. And if you want to be a guest, please reach out to me so that I can find a slot for you. So blessings to you all. And until next time.